Hi, I'm Marcus Hutzel, and in this video I'm going to show you how I process my audio in Adobe Premiere Pro for most of my videos here on YouTube, but I also use the same method and tools for a lot of professional work as well, so let's talk about it. A lot of commenters have asked me for a video showing how I process my audio for my videos here on YouTube. And I touched on some of my methods a bit in my previous two videos on how to use audio submix tracks, but in this video I'm going to show you my workflow and tools that I use to clean up and process my audio for the majority of my videos. And let's clarify a few things first. Number one, I do just about all of my audio editing within Adobe Premiere Pro without exporting audio to another program, fixing it there, and then having to re-import it back into Premiere. I just prefer to work entirely within the video editor if I can, so that I don't have to spend extra time exporting my audio and then re-importing it. Number two, this is definitely not the best method necessarily, but it's how I process my audio in a lot of my videos, and it works well if you know how to use your tools. There are definitely other audio programs and methods that are better at processing audio that can give you better results, depending on how much you need to fix, denoise, or process your audio. But the audio tools within Premiere are really pretty decent if used properly and conservatively. And one of the main reasons I stick to Premiere is for its audio abilities and the inclusion of a full audio mixer, just like you'd see in a standalone digital audio workstation like Apple Logic, Pro Tools, Adobe Audition, etc. And I often stick to this method for the ability to edit quickly, again, staying inside one editing program. Number three, this process applies mostly to how I record my audio in this space, because the way I record my audio requires a little bit of extra work in post-processing. Because even though I record my audio using my very nice Rode VideoMic NTG, which is right up here, I usually have it running directly into the 1/8" mic input on either my Panasonic GH5 or my Sony a7 III with a standard 1/8" TRS cable. And recording this way does add more noise to my audio, because the small 1/8" mic preamps on these types of cameras are just typically inherently noisier than a dedicated audio recorder, and usually noisier than going directly via USB if you have a USB microphone. So yes, I can get a cleaner audio signal by using my Rode VideoMic NTG directly via USB and recording into Adobe Audition. And I actually do record that way sometimes, but recording with the mic plugged directly into the camera is the way a lot of people start out using their mics and cameras, so this is a good overall workflow. And the reason I record this way is just to get recording more quickly, because I don't always have a lot of time to record my own videos. And this method requires less equipment, less setup time, and fewer steps. So it's quicker, albeit a bit noisier. But again, this type of recording situation may apply to more people using their gear in this way, so I think it may be helpful. And lastly, I have two goals in mind when processing my audio. Number one, get the overall loudness of the audio up to a level that can compete with other content on the internet. And number two, to have that audio sound as clean as possible. Now, to ensure your audio levels are loud enough, I do two things. Number one, I always make sure I can see my meters in Adobe Premiere Pro, and I have my meters docked and locked on the far right side of my screen of my Premiere window. And number two, I also route my audio to a loudness meter software program to measure my audio levels for loudness on the LUFS scale. And I use this Ulean loudness meter to monitor my final audio output, and I aim for about -17 to -16 LUFS. The LUFS scale basically averages the level of your audio, but it doesn't include the silent parts of your audio. So it's a good measure of overall perceived loudness and helps you ensure your levels are loud enough to compete with other content on the internet, and also allows you to see if your levels are too loud so you can adjust down if needed. But as far as how to get audio into the Ulean loudness meter, there are a few ways to do this. I'm not going to cover that extensively in this video, but hopefully I'll have a video soon on that topic. Check the links below as well. And I listen with several devices. I listen with my studio monitors, currently the PreSonus Iris E5 sitting here on my desk. I listen with my trusty Sony MDR7506 headphones. I listen with my AirPods. I also listen with my laptop speakers at times, just to ensure that the sound plays well onto all of these devices. All right, so once I've recorded my main video, I bring that video file from my camera into Premiere and drop it in a new timeline, and we can do that and see it here. And we can see my audio levels in the visual waveform here in the timeline as well. And if my audio levels look good, I'll usually just leave the main audio clip here alone, but I will sometimes add or subtract gain to the overall clip, or a few clips here and there if needed, just to level out everything. But as you can see, this test recording actually recorded my levels quite well, so we'll leave this one alone. But other than some audio level adjustments, I do not add any effects directly to my audio tracks here in the timeline, because I just don't want to have to click on an audio clip just to adjust my EQ or my compressor settings or anything else. So I usually just don't drag effects onto my audio clip. We'll reserve that for the track mixer a bit later. Then of course I'll just start editing my video, and I tend to jump back and forth between editing the video portion and then maybe spending a few minutes working on the audio, doing some EQing and compressing, and then going back to the video editing. And because I do it this way a lot, jumping back and forth, Adobe Premiere is pretty much, for me, the best at allowing this because it has a full audio mixer built in so I can use real-time effects. And you don't have to stop playback to pull up the full audio mixer and make changes. In DaVinci Resolve, you actually have to stop playback if you're in the edit window, switch to the audio or the Fairlight tab, then restart playback, and then you can make changes or add effects to the mixer. And Final Cut Pro doesn't even have an audio mixer, so I just don't use Final Cut Pro. So we're talking about the track mixer in Adobe Premiere Pro, and to bring that up, if you're in your timeline that you're working on, your sequence, you can just go up to Window, Audio Track Mixer, and then you select the track mixer for that sequence. I only have one sequence open right now, so I can click that one. It's called How I Edit Audio Sequence version 2. Click that, and I have my audio mixer docked up here on the left side, so you can see it there. But I also just assign a keyboard shortcut, so I don't have to go up to the menu every time. So again, if I'm in the sequence I want to work on, I've assigned Shift 1 as my keyboard shortcut, so I just can hit Shift 1, the mixer pops up. And then one of the other cool things about Premiere is that if you just hover your mouse over any window, you can then hit the tilde key. That's a little key next to the number 1 there on your keyboard. So hover your mouse over any window. Don't click with the mouse, but hover your mouse, press the tilde key, and it will make that window full screen. So we can bring up the track mixer with our keyboard shortcut. Again, minus Shift 1, it pops up. I hover my mouse over the window, I press the tilde key, and we've got the audio track mixer open for this sequence. But unfortunately, one of the main things that we need to use in the track mixer are the effects plugin slots. And in Premiere, by default, those are hidden. So up here in the track mixer, I'm gonna make this full screen. We can actually see this little caret up here, this little arrow. And we need to click on that and drop down, and now we can actually see our effects plugin slots, and we're going to need to use those because that's where we insert our real-time audio effects for our audio tracks. And you can see the 5 plugin slots available for every track. And the reason I do it this way with the track mixer is that I just like real-time online editing, and doing it all here in Premiere means it's non-destructive, so I can always make changes. Whereas some other standalone audio programs will allow you to compress or EQ or denoise your audio, but this way, using the audio track mixer and real-time plugins in Adobe Premiere, I can tweak things and I can go back and forth and change anything at any time. And again, any effects plugins that I add up here in the channel strip in the track mixer will affect any and all of the audio in that track in the timeline. So this way, to me, is much easier for processing your main audio, especially when you've got hundreds of edits in your timeline. And I don't have a template. I usually just start from scratch every time because I think it makes me really listen to the audio and figure out what I need to do to it instead of assuming I need to do the same thing to it every time. All right, so first things first, we should just listen to the raw audio. And I do recommend wearing headphones for this just to hear what's going on, as your laptop speakers may not be able to reproduce everything that you need to hear in this example. And again, we're listening with our trusty Sony MDR7506 headphones so that I can hear what you're hearing. So I'll play this. All right, so this is some test audio that I'm going to record specifically for this video, and I'm going to pause every now and then so that you can hear a little bit of the noise or the lack thereof if it's present in this sound sample. All right, so if you listen very carefully, you can hear that noise floor, and that's just the noise of the GH5's preamp and some ambient noise here in the room, but I don't like it and I want to get rid of it. And even though my recording levels are very good, I'm only hitting, between -15 up to a maximum of -6, but the average is about -12 dB FS there in the meters in Premiere. And if we check our Ulian loudness meter, we can see that I'm only hitting about -20, -20.5 on the LUFS scale. And as I said, I want to get up to about -16 LUFS, so we have a little work to do. And remember, my goal here is to clean up the audio and make the overall track louder. So we need to think through the signal flow of that and apply our audio effects in the proper order for the cleanest and loudest signal. And the first thing I do is add a denoise plugin. And the reason I do this first is that we're going to have to raise the overall level of my audio before we're done with the edit. And I'll do that primarily with compression. But if I compress first, I'll be taking the louder parts of my audio, the peaks, and I'll be compressing them down to even out my vocal. But in doing that, I will obviously be reducing the louder parts of my main audio signal and pushing them down closer to the noise floor, which is down here. Because compression won't reduce the quiet sounds, it only reduces the louder sounds that are above our threshold. So if we compress first, we now have a quieter track overall. And then we would need to boost that now quieter track or add output gain to get the overall level back up. But since our main audio signal is closer to the noise floor by compressing it first, then bringing up the overall level will bring up the noise floor with our main audio signal, making our noise floor even louder than it was when we started. We would actually be amplifying the noise if we compress first. So this is why I add a denoise plugin first, because I want to try to get rid of as much noise as possible so that the now cleaner signal with less noise is what goes into the compressor and the dynamics plugin, so that when I compress and then add output gain, I won't be boosting the noise floor. That's signal to noise ratio. So it's important to think about the signal flow of your plugins and use them in the right order. So I'll add my denoise plugin. And you want to be really careful with denoise plugins. They can really alter your audio in bad ways. So what I usually do once I get it open is I just turn it all the way down to 0 so that it's not doing anything. And then I'll just play through and bring up the percentage a little bit just to where the noise starts to go away, but it doesn't make my vocals sound weird, because it can start to make you sound a little robotic and distant if you overdo this. And sometimes I will select the focus on higher frequencies, because that hiss that's coming from the preamp, or any hiss really, is kind of it's kind of that higher pitched sound. And sometimes focusing the denoise plugin on those higher pitched sounds can help. But a lot of the time I will just leave it on to focus on all frequencies, and that does a pretty good job. So let's play this and then we'll start denoising. Just for a second, just so you can hear the differences of possibly a noise filter or not, to see how that may or may not interact with my voice as I speak. So that's pretty good. 7% may be as much as I want to go. And if we turn it off, back on, and hopefully this audio example, so just a little bit of denoising, we can go a little more if we want. Occasionally I'll go up to 9%, but again, it can really start to gate your vocal in weird ways. When you stop talking and start talking, the denoise plugin will kind of start and stop, and it can just make your vocal sound a little strange. So I'm very, very cautious with the denoise plugin. All right, so we've denoised a little bit, and the next thing I do is I add an expander, and that is located in amplitude and compression, and it's in the dynamics plugin here in Premiere. So we can open that, and you can see it has an auto gate, compressor, and expander. I don't use the auto gate and I don't use the compressor here. I expand first. And what an expander does is it basically, once you set the threshold, anything that's below that threshold is usually a quieter sound, and it's going to take those already quiet sounds and it's going to just turn the volume of those quiet sounds down even more. So anything that's not my main audio signal, anything that's below the threshold we set, is deemed a quieter sound. The expander will turn the volume down. And you want to be very careful with the expander here in Premiere. It's okay, it's not great. And once we turn it on, I usually set the ratio to just about 1.3, maybe 1.4. If you set it higher than 1.4, it can start to sound a little glitchy, and just gotta listen on good headphones to make sure it all still sounds good. So we will play this again. And hopefully this audio example of how I edit in Adobe Premiere will give you some ideas of what to do, or maybe what you don't like about it. And so I can actually hear right away how much further that expander got rid of additional noise. So that's why I'm cautious with the first denoise plugin, because the expander is going to take care of some of that extra noise. So I'm going to start playback here where I'm not talking, and I'll turn the expander on and off as we go so that you can actually hear what the expander is doing. So we'll turn it off, we'll play. Again, we're still hearing the denoise plugin. Pretty good. And if you listen very, very carefully with headphones, you can actually still hear a bit of noise. But let's turn the expander on as we play this. So we'll play it, turn the expander on. And hopefully this audio example of ta-da. So light with the denoise plugin, I take care of the rest of the noise with an expander, works great. And we'll leave it there. Negative 20 dB threshold, anything that's below negative 20 dB FS is going to get pushed down lower in level than it already was. So those two things are taken care of. Next thing I do is I add an EQ here. I add a full parametric equalizer. Now, of course, EQ is something that's going to be very subjective, but what I'm looking to do is take out the problem frequencies, anything that I hear in the audio track that isn't supposed to be there. And even though the Rode VideoMic TG is a decently expensive $250 microphone and it sounds really nice and full, I think that my voice has a little bit too much mid-range, and this mic and my voice, I think it just picks up more of that kind of nasally tone that I don't like in my voice, so sometimes I will take that out. I also usually high pass my vocal quite a bit to take care of some of the low end sounds like that air conditioning we were talking about earlier. Sometimes it'll help with taking those sounds out. So we'll bring up the parametric EQ. And again, this isn't required, but I'm always looking to take out frequencies. I rarely boost. Take out the problem frequencies and then bring up the level afterwards. So let's just listen. Hopefully this audio example of how I edit in Adobe Premiere will give you some. So honestly, the first thing I do is I turn on the high pass filter and I bring that up usually to about 120 or so. There's usually nothing down there that low in my voice that I'm going to need recording in this space. So I turn it on, it takes care of some of the low end rumbles that might be coming through. And we'll play again. Some ideas of what to do or maybe what you don't like about it. And I can hear kind of those nasally tones. And for me, those sit usually around 600, 500, 600, and then sometimes double the frequency an octave around 1000 hertz or 1K. And I'll take some of those mid-range frequencies out, and sometimes I'll just widen the Q of my EQs. And again, always listening. Let's play again. How you may or may not be able to stay within one program, specifically Adobe Premiere in this case, or maybe. So that's sounding a little bit better. And the rest of it is obviously trying to just listen and listen and listen, find any problem frequencies that I don't want in my audio. This is a good place for me to start. So let's turn off the EQ and I will turn it on as we play it. So here we go. We'll turn it off and we'll play. Maybe you need to edit your audio or want to edit it separately, and I do that sometimes, but I just like staying all within one program if I can, so that I can get these videos out as quickly as possible. And obviously taking out some of the mids makes it sound a little more crisp, which it can be a good thing, but I hear a little bit up here in kind of that high upper mids. We'll back it up and play it again. All within one program if I can, so that I can get these videos out as quickly as possible to you. All right, so we took a little bit of 3.5K out. And then the last thing I usually hear in this space with this mic is a little bit of extra, like 130 or so, 135, 140. It's mild. And these speakers, unfortunately, do have a little bit of a bump in that frequency, but I still find when I take this mix, if I don't take it out and I take it somewhere else, sometimes my voice can be a little too boomy. So I will sometimes reduce, a little bit of 130 around there. But again, EQ is to taste. Test it on multiple devices. Test it in your car to make sure it sounds good on all of the devices. All right, so our EQ is done. Now we've cleaned up our audio with a denoiser, with an expander. We've made it sound a little bit better with the EQ. Now we need to check our levels again. So if I hit play, I'll keep it muted so that you're hearing me talk and you're just watching the meters from this recording. So we can see here that the meters are still roughly the same. And if we check our Ulean loudness meter, we've actually reduced our signal because taking those frequencies out in the EQ takes out frequencies, takes out some level. Our level dropped a little bit. So now that we've cleaned up and made it sound better, we need to start boosting the level. And again, we do that with a compressor. So I'm going to add a compressor next. And we'll do that with the dynamics processing there. That's where the main compressor is in Adobe Premiere. And we'll hit play here and we will just watch our compressor. And this is why you need strong levels when recording, because we don't have to amplify our signal. We've got enough signal into our compressor. We can see that right here. So I'll just bring this down and I'll bring down the threshold a bit. Sometimes we'll go over to the settings and add a little bit more input gain so that the compressor is getting a little bit more input. And we'll just start compressing out a little bit more input gain right there, 2.6 dB, so that the compressor can actually grab some of my audio signal. And then we'll compress a little more. We'll bring the threshold down to -25 or so. So we can see now we're hitting about, 5 to 7 dB of reduction. And we can verify that reduction over on our meters. And we can also verify in the Ulean loudness meter. We'll reset the meter there. So now we're at -22. And remember, I want to get up to -16. So now that we've made it sound good and equalized it and compressed it, we need to now bring the level up. And I will do that here in the settings of the compressor on the output gain. Our compressor took our signal, compressed it, and now the compressor needs to add some output gain to get the overall level up. And we will just start adding right here some ideas of what to do or maybe what you don't like about it. And we're always watching our meters over there to ensure we're not clipping out. And a lot of the time, and actually I'm going to do that in this session, I'm going to add a hard limiter right here on the actual vocal channel. You can see there that I actually clipped out just a bit because my vocal got a little loud and the compressor wasn't able to catch it. So put a hard limiter on the end and we'll come back to the compressor. So we'll watch our meters, we'll clear the clip about it, and we're just listening now. We're listening and watching the meters. So I've got plus 5.6 dB of output gain. I'm gonna compress a little more separately, and I do that sometimes, but I just like staying all within one program if I can, so that I can get these videos out as quickly as possible. And the compressor in Premiere has a cool feature. You can actually add another point there, and you can bring the top down. So from this threshold to here, it will compress at a certain ratio. And then once it goes over kind of like a second threshold, it'll actually compress the upper level that much more. So sometimes I will add that extra dot and compress everything just a little bit more on the top end. Of what to do, or maybe what you don't like about it, and how you may or may not be able to. All right, so I overdid it a bit. We can look on the LUFS scale and we can see I'm actually hitting negative 15.9. I'm close. I'm probably a little too loud. So I'm going to go back into Premiere and I'm going to bring this down to 4.9 output. We'll go back to Ulean. We'll reset the meter to let it grab a new fresh audio signals out as quickly as possible to you. This audio, great, and that's actually about where I want to be. Again, I'm a little bit loud, but that's okay. We can make fine adjustments from here. But the last thing that I hear in this audio track is a lot of sibilant sounds, and we need to get rid of it. It can be very jarring and disruptive to people listening when they're hearing a lot of S sounds. But we have one problem, and that's that we've used all of our effects plugin slots in the mixer. So again, make this large. We've only got 5 slots in our audio track mixer. How do we add a De-Esser? Well, again, I do not want to drop a De-Esser onto the audio track. I want to use the audio track mixer. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to send my main audio over to a Submix track. I did 2 videos on Submix tracks. I will link them hopefully up there, definitely down there. So what I'm going to do is in my sequence here, I'm going to right click in some blank space on my audio tracks. I'm going to add audio Submix track. And if we go back up to the mixer, again, hover the mouse, press the tilde key, we can see Submix 1. I'm going to name this Vox Submix. And then we're going to take our main vocal track and we're going to drop it down and route it to that Vox Submix track. And now we actually get 5 additional plugins on the Submix track that our main audio can use if it needs it. And a lot of the times that's why I'll place that hard limiter as the 5th plugin there on the main audio track, because I usually need to do this de-essing process. So hard limiter so it doesn't clip out the main audio channel. And then we'll add the De-Esser on our audio Vox Submix track. So I will go ahead and click this and put De-Esser right there. And of course, now we need to listen. You need to edit your audio or want to edit it separately. And I do that sometimes, but I just like staying all within one. And I'll usually make it somewhat wider than the default. And again, we'll listen. You may or may not be able to stay within one program, specifically Adobe Premiere in this case, or maybe you need to edit your audio or want to edit it separately, and I do that sometimes. And we'll go back to the Ulean meter and check our LUFS scale. We'll reset it to see what levels we're getting. How I edit in Adobe Premiere will give you some ideas of what's a little too hot. So I'm going to go back to my compressor, and I'm going to change the output gain to 4. Now I could just do this with the fader, but I will often just do it with the compressor and leave my fader at 0. And real quick, I'm going to turn off all the effects and let you hear the unprocessed raw audio, and then I'll turn on all the effects and let you hear the difference. Here we go. All right, so I've split up the audio into track 1 and track 2. Track 1 has all the effects on it. Track 2, the bottom track here, has no effects. So as this plays, I'll note on screen whether you're hearing the effects or not. Again, headphones are best because a lot of the times, even my raw audio just on laptop speakers sounds pretty great, but being a stickler for clean audio, if I'm ever listening on headphones, boy, I can hear that noise and I don't like it. So here goes. And hopefully this audio example of how I edit in Adobe Premiere will give you some ideas of what to do or maybe what you don't like about it, and how you may or may not be able to stay within one program, specifically Adobe Premiere in this case, or maybe you need to edit your audio or want to edit it separately, and I do that sometimes. But I just like staying all within one program if I can, so that I can get these videos out as quickly as possible to you. So hopefully I can teach you what I know. All right, so to recap, Make sure you record your audio into your camera or computer at a strong level to get it above any noise in your system or in your camera. Then what I do is I denoise. I expanded the signal to make the quieter parts even more quiet. Then I EQ'd the signal to what I thought sounded better. And then I compressed the now cleaner EQ'd signal and then used the output gain of the compressor to get the overall level and loudness up. Then I made sure I wasn't clipping anywhere. And then, since I wanted more options, I routed my audio to a submix track, but this is optional if you only need the 5 plugins, but I needed more than 5. And then on that submix track, I added a De-Esser. I almost forgot. Usually I will put a hard limiter on the master output bus just to make sure nothing clips in the final mix. And for this edit, I was done. So, record well, denoise, expand, EQ, compress, De-Esser, limit. Whew. All right, I think that's about it. I truly hope you've learned something in this video, and if you have, please leave me a comment below. Consider subscribing. I really like working in Adobe Premiere because I can stay in one program. Yes, I can record cleaner audio in different ways, but using the tools I have at my disposal, I'm able to clean up things really, really well using, again, the default plugins. These aren't purchased plugins. These are the ones that come with Adobe Premiere. So I didn't have to spend extra money because, hey, I already spent all my money on the Adobe Creative Suite. So don't have to spend more money to get great audio. Anyway, until next time, later.